Hello, this is Stanley Clark, and you're listening to Your Morning Coffee, the podcast. Weekly music news for the new music business.
From Midia, music subscriber market shares 2024. Slowdown? What's slowdown?
From Sherwood, a record 100 million Americans now pay for a music subscription service. Is streaming the final format for fans?
From Music Business Worldwide, 22,100 artists generated over $50,000 on Spotify last year. The company argues that way more artists are generating meaningful money now than in any previous era of the music industry.
And from Billboard, SoundCloud listener report highlights the platform's role as a Gen Z tastemaker. Well, Jay, I want to be a Gen Z tastemaker one of these days.
Yes.
I know. Wouldn't that be nice? Well, we have got, let's just say, a load of stories. And boy, we are looking forward to share them with everyone. So we're going to start the show right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Jay, it is good to see you, and we're a little tired. Let's just be honest. We had a really fun week, but a lot of traveling and hopping around, but hanging out at Ohio University for their Music Industry Summit was nothing but fun.
Yeah, it was a great week, and we got to hang out together. And typically, you don't get to go to these conferences with me because you have a day job and all of that stuff. But it was really cool, traveling with you, hanging out. And then, we recorded the podcast live 2 different days in a row in front of an audience. And special shout out to Josh Antonuccio, who puts this thing on. And he and his team are absolutely fantastic. Boy, we had a great time.
We really did, of course, hanging out with Mike Warner, Ariel Hyatt, Maria Hoburge, and seeing Andrea Gleason actually from TuneCore. We got a chance to chat with her, but seeing her presentation or her interview actually was really interesting. Big thanks to Mackenzie Kacharski from Ohio University for connecting me with my new friend Tommy Boone, who's getting people paid over in the royalties department at UMG. And on my drive back to the airport with Tommy, I got to hear, it's rare that you talk with someone who's dealing day in and day out with royalties. And we talked about the merging of systems and how they're still even struggling with the original merger, the UMG merger back in '98. And it's such an important department. And one of these days we got to chat with him on the podcast about royalties, because that is where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, so you can check out the Ohio University Music Industry Summit on their website. And some of these guest lectures and panels are up for you to listen to, but it's Josh does a great job. It's a world-class summit. Coming this week, we just dropped De La Soul behind the set list. Glenn and I did for the Billboard podcast, and I'm super excited. This week we're interviewing Thurston Moore from Sonic Youth.
Wow, that should be really, really fun. And by the way, I also wanted to mention, if we talk about the Your Morning Coffee podcast book club, and on that trip, I got to read the Mike Campbell book, a memoir, Heartbreaker, it's entitled, and I know you have ordered it, and You're going to love the book.
Well,
Everybody
tell
should
them
read the
who,
book.
for
It's
those that don't
fantastic.
know, tell them who Mike Campbell is.
Oh, he is the guitar player in Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and of course now in the Dirty Knobs, and he's played and written with so many different artists, and his story is really fascinating and interesting, and it's a worthy read.
Yeah, I can't wait to read that book. So there were some really great stories in the newsletter this week. One of them, the headline was Napster sold for $207 million to Infinite Reality, which wants to launch the music streamer into 3D virtual concerts, e-commerce, and more. And that was by Todd Spangler at Variety. He writes that digital music OG, Napster, is now owned by immersive technology company Infinite Reality, which announced the deal last Tuesday to acquire the platform for $207 million.
Wow. So Infinite Reality plans to expand Napster beyond just a basic music streaming service where it faces bigger competitors like Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and Amazon. In a press release, Infinite Reality said Napster will become a social music platform that prioritizes active fan engagement over passive listening and will let artists connect with, own, and monetize their relationship with their fans.
Super interesting. We'll see how this goes. Infinite Reality's ideas for Napster include creating branded 3D virtual spaces for virtual concerts, social listening parties, other community-based experiences, selling merch, digital content, and even tickets, and using AI-powered customer service, sales, and community management agents for personalization. Interesting.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, we're certainly going to keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
Another interesting story, Apple Music integrates with DJ, boy, I sounded like an old person saying that, with DJ apps to let subscribers mix their entire music library. This was a piece in Music Business Worldwide by Mandy DeLugdug. Apple Music has unveiled a new integration enabling its subscribers to build and mix sets directly from the platform's catalog of over 100 million songs.
Yeah, my DJ friends are really excited about this. The new feature is called DJ with Apple. It connects Apple Music with DJ software and hardware, different providers, including Alpha, Theta, Serato, and InMusic's Engine DJ, Denon DJ, Newmark, and Rain DJ to create an ecosystem for music mixing and discovery.
Right. In addition to providing direct access to Apple Music's 100 million track library, the integration also provides a new dedicated DJ with Apple Music category page on the platform, as well as created editorial playlists for DJs.
Yeah, in addition, Apple Music, other DSPs and music platforms have also enhanced their DJ offerings in recent years. You'll remember in 2020, SoundCloud launched their $19.99 a month DJ plan. That was called SoundCloud DJ, and that offered unlimited offline access to the platform's catalog in its DJ performance software integrations.
Right, and last year Beatport, an online store focused on electronic music and DJ culture, teamed up with Amazon-owned Twitch to launch its own channel to support the DJ community. Twitch launched its DJ program in June of 2024 to cater to the growing number of DJs streaming on its platform.
Yeah, congratulations,
Interesting
Apple.
stuff.
Very cool.
Indeed. And Jay, what do you say? We testify and thank our sponsors. We are super lucky to have them.
Yeah, we are sponsored by the Mechanical Licensing Collective, the MLC. It's a nonprofit organization, and it's making a big difference for songwriters, music publishers, and rights holders by transforming how they receive mechanical streaming royalties from services like Spotify and Apple Music in the United States. Every month, the MLC collects the streaming data and royalties from those platforms. It matches the money to the creator who's earned it and then pays them or their publishers and admin partners the royalties they're due. To date, the MLC has already distributed over $2.5 billion in total royalties and has nearly 50,000 members worldwide. So if you're a songwriter, composer, lyricist, or something with music streaming or publisher or admin, you need to become a member of the MLC to ensure you're not leaving any money on the table. And best of all, membership is completely free, and the MLC pays out 100% of the royalties it receives. So visit themlc.com to learn more.
Indeed, and a big special thank you to Music.ai. Music.ai is a trailblazing AI-powered music and audio platform offering an expansive suite of over 50 stackable AI audio solutions. Want to change the tempo or pitch of your song? Adjust instruments or vocals? Mute background noise in a movie? Music.ai makes it easy. Embraced by record labels, agencies, tech firms, and developers, Music.ai is synonymous with audio innovation. With over 45 million users, their tools process over 2 million minutes of audio daily. They can process yours today. Jump over to music.ai to get started, and you will get lost in all the wonderful tools.
Yes, sir.
And every week in fact, this week I got to hang out extensively with my good friend Jay Gilbert, music industry consultant, curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter, and a former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, and Warner Music Groups.
Yeah, my partner in crime here is Mike Etchart, longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Group, and someone who reads as much as I do. And I'm really excited to read that Mike Campbell book, and thanks for telling me about that.
Indeed. Well, let's jump into the stories, Jay. The first one, it's from Mark Mulligan over at Media. Music subscriber market shares 2024. Slowdown? What slowdown? Record label streaming revenue growth slowed to 6% in 2024, but there was no such slowdown in subscriber growth. As Mark says in our just published music subscriber market shares Q4 2024 report, we reveal that 85 million net new subscribers added in 2024 was only 2 million less than in 2023, resulting in 818 million subscribers and growth of 12%, i.e. around double label revenue growth.
So he says, what's going on? How could subscriber and revenue growth become so decoupled? Normally, the answer for the music industry questions like this is, it's complicated. But this time, it's not. It can be boiled down to two key things: Global South and incentivized growth. On to those in a minute, but first, let's talk about market shares.
Right. So Mark says Spotify continues to set the pace. Spotify's market share, which is 32%, is around where it was back in 2015, has remained relatively stable in all the intervening quarters. That might sound like stasis, but it is anything but. Between 2015 and 2024, the global base of music subscribers grew by more than 850%. So, to maintain market share, Spotify has had to grow at a similar rate.
Yeah, during 2024, Spotify added 28 million subscribers. That's more than the combined total number of subscribers added in the second, third, and fourth largest DSPs. That's Tencent, Apple, and Amazon. The simple arithmetic is that when you command a strong market lead, you have to add a lot more subscribers than the rest to maintain your market share. It's easy to take Spotify's success for granted, but don't. This is what a highly effective company that retains an obsessive appetite for growth looks like.
Right. So let's talk about Tencent Music Entertainment. Even though it operates in China, Tencent is the second largest DSP globally with 120 million subscribers. What is more, it grew so strongly that it slightly increased global market share in 2024, though its key competitor NetEase Cloud Music grew even faster and so gained China market share at Tencent's expense.
But YouTube is making up ground fast. In percentage terms, YouTube was the fastest growing global DSP in 2024, growing market share and only missing out on knocking off Apple, that fourth spot, by a margin in the low hundreds of thousands. So Spotify and YouTube are the ones setting the global pace. And though YouTube is far behind Spotify globally, it's the top DSP in a number of key global South markets, including India. Now, on to why subscriber growth is so much faster than revenue growth.
Right. Well, let's talk about number one, the Global South. The Global South, by which we mean regions that are not North America and Europe, is now the music industry's growth engine. Last year, Mark said we entitled our music forecast report Rise of the Global South, and our view was borne out in 2024 with these regions accounting for 78% of all subscribers added in 2024.
Right.
Wow.
Global South. Let that settle in for a moment. 4/5 of all subscriber growth came from outside of Europe and North America. Of course, those two regions still account for a majority of the revenues, but as subscriber growth slows in those markets, it's lifting off elsewhere. This is nothing less than a rebalancing of the global music industry.
Right, which creates a major uncoupling of growth metrics for Western rights holders. Global South markets have lower ARPU, and Western repertoire share is low there. Western rights holders see a double discount on subscriber value compared to Western markets.
Right, and Mark's second point is incentivized growth. In the first phase of streaming growth, ad-supported users acted as the key means of converting subscribers. In mature Western markets, most people on free tiers are there because they like free stuff rather than being prospective subscribers. But this is why free trials have become the key tool for driving conversion. In saturated Western markets, it seems that these trials are being liberally to try to squeeze out the last pockets of subscriber growth. In turn, it's putting a dent into that ARPU.
Right. Mark says, consider the case of the U.S. According to the RIAA's figures, subscription revenue grew by 5.3% and ARPU growth was 1.9%. Meanwhile, U.S. inflation was 2.9%, but the streaming price inflation rate was 9.1%. So a dollar price increase resulted in ARPU decreasing by 1 percentage point in real terms, i.e. inflation adjusted.
Right. We should probably say that ARPU, for those that don't know, is just average revenue per user, ARPU. The next point was foundations for growth. 2024 was a great year for global subscriber growth and was particularly a good year for Spotify, YouTube, Tencent, and NetEase. The divergence between revenues and users is clearly cause for concern, but it's better for the long term to be growing subscribers, as once you have them monetized, you can start focusing on growing monetization. Hello, Sue Premium.
All growth figures refer to net additions, i.e. the difference between the total number of subscribers one year to another. They do not actually account for churn. The total gross number of subscribers added is significantly higher. The net figure thus refers to the total after churned out subscribers have been removed from the totals. If you want the latest entertainment research and insights directly to your inbox, do subscribe to Media's newsletter. That's at MediaResearch.com, and we love that newsletter, by the way.
Yeah, great job by Mark Mulligan. Our second story is from Murray Stassen over at Music Business Worldwide, and it's got a rather lengthy headline, which is 22,100 artists generated over $50,000 on Spotify last year. The company argues that way more artists are generating meaningful money now than in any previous era of the music industry. And we've been talking about this a lot lately. There are two ways to look at how much artists are earning on Spotify. On one hand, more artists than ever are creating music, and that's a good thing, while the overall percentage of acts who find financial success from streaming appears to be shrinking.
Right. So nearly 12 million artists had music on Spotify last year. That's a 2 million artist increase from 2023. So some 71,200 of these artists, which is just 0.6% really, generated over $10,000 on the platform in 2024.
Yet Spotify's loudest Loud and Clear report shows that the actual volume of artists earning significant amounts from the platform has significantly increased in size since 2017.
Right. So, for example, 22,100 artists, as Jay said, generated $50,000 or above in combined recording and publishing royalties from Spotify in 2024. That's up 200% from 2017, back when only about 7,400 artists generated that much.
Yeah, and remember that, that's Spotify's a third of the streaming. So hopefully these artists are gaining even more revenue from the other DSPs as well. Meanwhile, about 3,000 artists generated over $500,000 on Spotify last year, and that was up over 200% since 2017. What's more, Spotify highlights that just 235,000 artists on its service have released over 10 songs to date and average at least 10,000 monthly listeners. Two key indicators, it says, of professional and or emerging artists, aka not hobbyists.
So among this subset of 235,000 artists, nearly a third, a little over 30%, generated more than $10,000 in royalties on Spotify last year, and nearly 1 in 10, that's the 22,100, generated over $50,000.
Right. So this is an interview that they did with Charlie Hellman. He's Spotify's global head of music vertical. Quote, "It's clear to see that way more artists are able to be in the game and generate meaningful money now than in any previous era of the music industry," end quote. And I think he's absolutely spot on.
Right. So he added, we need to keep that going. He says, I don't think it's a bad thing that there are also now millions more who are hobbyists or aspiring artists as well. In previous eras, those folks couldn't even share their music.
That's right. At the end of 2024, Spotify had paid out nearly $60 billion to music rights holders since the company was founded back in 2008.
Right, so in this Music Business Worldwide article by Murray Stassen, Hellman gives us an overview of Spotify's latest Loud and Clear report, highlighting trends across payout thresholds, languages, and how, despite what people think, streaming is not a hits economy.
No, so the first question in this interview that Murray asked him was, the number of artists uploading music to Spotify grew by 2 million to nearly 12 million last year. What does that tell us about the wider music-making landscape, and what are the challenges and opportunities presented by the scale of music creators uploading music to Spotify?
Right. So Hellman said there are no more barriers. Millions, not thousands, now have the tools to share their art globally. While the competition is fierce, it always has been, the volume of successful artists has dramatically increased year over year.
So Murray asks him, looking at the royalty thresholds, can you tell us how these thresholds have grown over time, and where would you like to see each of them be in the next 10 years?
So he said, by and large, it will come down to this. Today, there are more than 500 million paying listeners across all music streaming services. If we as an industry can work together to reach 1 billion paying subscribers, or even more, that will directly translate to more revenues, being able to sustain more artists achieving all of those earnings milestones.
He goes on to ask, 80% of artists who generated $1 million or more last year didn't have a song reach the Spotify Global Daily Top 50. What does that tell us about the changing dynamics of the music industry?
So he said it means that the independent musicians, less mainstream artists, and niche genres can all thrive in the new streaming economy. He said people think streaming is a hits economy. It's not.
Of the artists who generated $1,000 or more in royalties on Spotify in 2024, more than half saw their royalties come from listeners outside of their home country. What does that tell us about the globalization of music, and what other trends did you identify this year that tie into this globalization narrative?
Right, so he responded, the 1,450 artists who generated $1 million plus also record music in 17 different languages, which is pretty incredible. You think back 10 or 20 years with a mostly US EU focused industry, and this definitely wasn't the case. Over 50 languages were represented among artists earning at least $100,000.
That's incredible. And the last thing he asked him, what else should we know about the report? And he said that being a bit abstract, and to me, the most important thing about the report is that it exists. For our industry to have a constructive dialogue about the health of the ecosystem and where it can improve, transparency is vital. He goes on to say that I would love to see every corner of the music industry share the data that they have so we can see an even more complete picture. I think there's some valid points made here.
Yeah.
Streaming gets sort of a bad rap sometimes, and especially Spotify, they bear the brunt of the industry complaints sometimes. And, not all of it is deserved. And the fact that you can reach a global audience and that you can make money, we always say that a stream isn't worth a download, and a download isn't worth a CD, and a CD isn't worth premium vinyl, etc. But all in all, it's really helped the industry get back on its feet again.
Sure has, yeah. Well, let's jump over to this, the lead story in the Your Morning Coffee newsletter. If you like interactive charts and graphs as much as we do, by the way, Jay is a nut for interactive charts and graphs, I'll be honest. Got to check this one out. It's by David Crowther over at Tom Jones Sherwood. So a record 100 million Americans now pay for a music subscription. Is streaming the final format for fans?
Yeah, David and Tom, who wrote this, they say that industries change, but none of that is so fundamental to our culture, as radical as a transformation as the music industry. In the late 70s and early 80s, formats were changing rapidly. The 8-track era was coming to an end, as was the golden age of vinyl.
Right. Cassettes, meanwhile, were enjoying their audio ascendancy with the mighty CD not far behind. Just before the turn of the millennium, the industry was pretty healthy, with record labels, promoters, publishers, and artists splitting the spoils of the market.
Yeah, but right before Y2K, remember that? The internet truly announced itself, and the music file sharing sites like Napster being founded in the summer of 1999. Then everything changed. Sales of CDs and cassettes fell off a cliff. The industry pivoted hard, to the download model, and that really helped stave off a complete disaster.
And while ringtones proved effective at annoying everyone, they generated some decent revenue. However, it wasn't until streaming emerged that the recorded music industry has been able to return to growth, helped, of course, by vinyl's remarkable comeback.
Right. So even so, once adjusted for inflation, the U.S. recorded music market is still considerably below its peak from the 1990s. If you zoom out, the RIAA data shows that when adjusted for inflation, recorded music industry revenues in the U.S. are down 36% from their $27.5 billion peak in 1999, when we were all rushing out to buy albums by Britney Spears and the Backstreet Boys on CD.
That's right, and exactly how that revenue is split among artists remains as contentious as ever. Streaming sites like Spotify talk up how many rights holders have been paid more than $1 million from their platform, some 1,500 last year, according to the music giant. But how much of that actually reaches the pockets of artists is, of course, a different and altogether murkier question.
Yeah, but take a look at this story. It's a lead story in your morning coffee. And as you scroll through the article, the graph, the chart, it changes as you scroll through, and it really gives you a nice visual representation of the trends and the history of the music industry over the last 20 years.
Yeah, it's a wonderful article. And again, the graphic design, somebody spent a lot of time putting that together. It's really cool. And it really breaks it down. And Jay, let's thank our sponsors who bring us to the party every week.
Yeah, we're sponsored by Hypebot since 2004. Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are really changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. It's edited daily by our friend Bruce Houghton with help from Alana Bonilla. Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank. They're published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
Indeed, Bands in Town. Over 90 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It's the #1 artist service platform, connecting over 650,000 artists with their superfans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms. And again, thanks to Bands in Town, I knew about that Todd Rundgren, Burt Bacharach tribute show in Ventura was it just last week? Yes, I think it was just last week.
Yeah.
I went to. Fantastic show.
You love Bands in Town. Yep.
Oh, I do too. Too. I spend way too much money on concert tickets because of Bands in Town. But I think that's the idea.
Yeah.
Our final story, Jay. SoundCloud listener report highlights the platform's role as a Gen Z tastemaker. This is from Elias Light over at Billboard. SoundCloud, who has just released its inaugural Music Intelligence Report this past week, the first ever annual report highlighting the top artists, tracks, and emerging music trends that define the past year on SoundCloud.
Right. So this is the first time the platform is launching this report to showcase how SoundCloud identifies rising movements before they break into the mainstream, reinforcing its position as the go-to platform for music discovery.
Right. So Illuminate found that tracks released in the last 5 years account for roughly 50% of on-demand streams in the U.S. Even so, SoundCloud users are much more keenly attuned to the newest releases than the average listener. Current music has accounted for more than 46% of plays on the platform in each of the last 3 years. That's according to SoundCloud's latest Music Intelligence report.
Right. The report highlights some of our unique positions in the industry, says Wyatt Marshall. That's the company's director of music intelligence. He goes on to say that an artist might start on SoundCloud before they get somewhere else. As a result, you get people coming to listen to new music on SoundCloud because that's where it exists first.
Right, since SoundCloud artists and users can interact with music in ways beyond just clicking play and skip, commenting on songs, for example, or sending direct messages to peers, the platform has additional data to parse when trying to map scenes. Marshall explains, we look at social interaction among artists as an indicator of affinity. Zooming out from that gives us a feel for what shapes a scene.
And finally, they talk about music scenes, Plug and B, Rage, Cloud Rap, Reggaeton, and as we end this piece, just note that Plug and B, that's that evolving subgenre you may have read about, that it's trap music that emerged from Plug, incorporating melodic R&B synths, vocals, and that hard-hitting 808 bass lines and tap drum patterns. Really interesting thing about SoundCloud here.
Yeah, very much so. And it's funny, we still talk about the Roland 808 drum machine, which was a huge flop for Roland, and then got discovered by all the hip hop artists and stuff. So
ahead of its time?
It is ahead of its time. Our last story, it's from Discogs. Inflation is changing the way we collect records. Increased vinyl prices and inflation are causing collectors to switch up their buying habits. Discogs analyze data from vinyl sales and collector surveys to understand exactly how much we're paying now, and more importantly, how that is changing the way we collect. Do you ever find a record and think, I could have gotten this cheaper a few years ago? Well, guess what? You're right.
Yeah, they go on to say that the average price of one vinyl record purchased today is about 24% more expensive compared to 5 years ago, and collectors are paying more for new and used. And this is according to Discogs marketplace analysis. There are many factors to these rising prices, but two of the most identifiable ones are inflation and, get this, industry greed.
What?
Shocker.
Industry greed.
Yeah.
Don't see that ever. It's no secret that everyone is dealing with overall price increases following the COVID-19 pandemic. We may be seeing the highest vinyl price tags in 2025, but the most significant increase occurred between 2020 and 2021 when supply chains and shipping routes were disrupted. Unfortunately, inflation continues to worsen.
Yeah, it goes on to say that it starts before a record even gets pressed. The cost of manufacturing has clearly risen. Because of the cost of raw materials, they've gone up, said Travis Searle of Guest Room Records from Louisville, Kentucky. He goes on to say that additionally, the cost of living has increased. The wages being paid to employees at pressing plants and product warehousing facilities, they've all gone up.
Right. So Philip Barton of fuck me. Thank God we're on the last page. So Philip Barton of London's Sister Ray Records adds, perception on price is that it has become too expensive. The reality is that there are pressures on the supply chain that didn't exist 30 to 40 years ago. In 2020, collectors on Discogs paid an average of about almost $30 for a mint record. That price has the buying power of a little over $36 in today's economy and nearly matches the $37.22 that collectors are dishing out in 2025. That's according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Yeah, and finally, wages haven't necessarily kept up with inflation at the same rate, and buying power doesn't equate to our personal buying budgets. Check out the link to this entire report in this week's Your Morning Coffee. It's really great. And I know, Mike, you and I both spent a lot of time on Discogs, and if anybody listening has not explored Discogs, you need to go check it out. It is the place for record collectors. You can add your library if you want, your collection. You don't have to, but you can sort of go in there and explore what the value is on certain records and see what's still in print and not in print. And it's just a great community for record freaks like us.
And you'll be reaching for your credit card. I guarantee it. It's very, very quickly, and it's a fantastic place, though. So as we wrap up the show, Jay, we want to thank everyone for listening, and please tell one friend. Jay and I would certainly appreciate that. Big thanks to the MLC, Bandzoogle, Music.ai, Hypebot, and Bands in Town for helping us rock the show. We couldn't do it without them. And, of course, big thanks to my good friend Jay Gilbert for letting me hang out with him all week in the lovely town of Athens, Ohio. So, on behalf of Jay Gilbert and myself, I'm Mike Etchart. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week on the Your Morning Coffee Podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.